Early aviators and women's rights leaders. Ruth Law was a pioneer American aviatrix during the 1910s.
On November 19, 1916, at 2:07 p.m. on a cold, windy day, Ruth Bancroft Law landed in the little village of Hornell on a Curtiss plane.
Ruth Law was a daring air pilot that flew from Chicago, Illinois to New York City.
She had other goals within this. She meant to get to New York City that same day. But we have to do a visual on this if we can just use our imagination. Here is a woman who is in a small plane. She tried to buy a bigger plane, but Mr. Curtiss would not sell it to a woman. He didn't feel she had any right to be in the big planes. He was also, in his defense, he was also very involved in building airplanes for the war. So he said no to Miss Law, and she had to use her old airplane. And they reinforced it. They did as much as they could. They put a little shield up in front of her because of her little pusher. The gas tank was back here. She was sitting right here, and then she had a little shield right here where her feet were. And then she had the rudder and the control on both of sticks in front of her. So she had to constantly keep her hands on these sticks. Without that, the plane would lose, she would lose control of the plane very easily. So any time, okay, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So she did a Curtiss pusher. They put an additional gas tanks in the back. Then let's talk about that she was going to be in the air for 6 hours more. High, cold, it was November, much less anything else. And she was a woman. So women back then had to wear skirts. So in order to get ready for this flight, she slept outside in a tent on the Morrison Hotel in Chicago prior to her flight time. And she slept out there to condition her body for the cold. In readying herself, she had 2 layers of wool, 2 layers of leather, a woolen cat helmet, leather helmet, and goggles. She had to have her hands on the controls at all times. If you took your hand off the controls and anything happened, the wind of gusts came and you would lose control of your airplane, it would be a great percentage of death. You know, it's so easy to lose control of a small airplane like that. So she had to have her hands on the controls at all time. She devised a little scrolling map. She did where she wanted to go to. She put it on a scroll and she put it on a little apparatus and she hooked it on her leg. So in order to scroll further on her map, she had to put her knee up and hold the control and do it very fast and scroll more to see where she was going next. She had to be low enough to see the landscape, to know where she was going, but high enough to get the draft well. She had to do the higher altitude in order to get the flight she needed with the gasoline she had. So she said that 10 miles out of Hornell, she ran out of gas. But then she would tilt her plane a little bit and get a little bit more in the carburetor, and that kept her going a little bit further. 2 miles out of Hornell, she completely ran out of gas. So this is not a glider. This is an airplane. This is a woman. It's 1916, and she is out of gas in the air over Hornell. She glided into Hornell. She came in low. People were amazed. They were all on the outlook for her along her flight. They knew her flight. They were saying, "There's Ruth Law." So her airplane was a big happening in Hornell at that time. Everyone was at the Great Hornell Fair, which is where we have the high school right now. And she came in really low, and she landed successfully. And she couldn't get out of her airplane. But why wouldn't she get out of her airplane right away? She'd been in the cold for 6 hours with the tension of holding her sticks like this, her control sticks. She had a very difficult time limbering up. Somebody had to assist her out of the airplane. So when she first stood, what I love about history is I love photographs. So this is Hornell in 1916 right here. So this is her getting out. She's pretty well covered. And this is, she had people on the ground. They knew she was going to land in Hornell to gas up. And they assisted her out of her airplane, they gassed up her airplane, and then she went to a local hotel, which I have never been able to find out where, for a little bit of thing, to warm up and have a little bit to eat. And then she got right back onto her airplane. Oh, but she had to take her skirt out. I forget that. That's a very important part. She had a little skirt, well, not a little skirt, a skirt tucked behind her seat because a woman in 1916 didn't walk around in pants. So she had to put a skirt over her outfit.
She stopped to refill for oil in Hornell. Her first words were, "My, but it is cold up there."
She circled over the entire city and landed at the Hornell Fairground, the current Hornell High School.
Set a record with her flight of 661 miles and with a total of 5 hours and 41 minutes in the air from Chicago to Hornell, New York. Glenn Stewart Scott pioneered American Aviators during the 1910s.
Blanche Stewart Scott learned to fly at the Glenn Curtiss Expedition Company. She took lessons August and September of 1910 and took to the air in Hammondsport, New York.
She was the first and only woman to receive instruction from Curtiss to prevent her aircraft from gaining enough speed to become airborne while taxiing on her own. Curtiss inserted a block of wood behind the throttle pedal. However, something happened on September 2, and Scott managed to fly to an altitude of 12 meters, 40 feet in the air. She continued her lesson and made her debut as a member of the Curtiss team at the Chicago meet on October 1-9, 1910.
October 23, 1910, she made her first public flight at the first professional appearance of a woman aviator in the country at Fort Wayne, IN.
1916, she hung up her small leather Aviator's hat and goggles after surviving a number of violent plane crashes and several crash landings.
So what was her connection to Hornell? In the 1940s, she became the Hornell radio station WARC's program director. She had a popular radio show, Rambling with Roberta.
The Hearst Prize. Publisher William Randolph Hart had offered a $50,000 purse to the first venture to fly across the coast in 30 days or less.
Cal Rogers enlisted an armor meatpacking company as a sponsor promising to promote a new soft drink, Vin Fizz.
He purchased a Wright Model X biplane, called it Vin Fizz, and on September 17, 1911, took off from Sheepshead Bay on Long Island, New York.
Almost from day one, he had problems. He had many crashes and problems along his way across the U.S.
Hornell connection?
Flying from Elmira, where he struck some telegraph wires just as he lifted off, and settled abruptly back to Earth. The damage was not serious, but it delayed his departure for 6 hours. The rest of the day wasn't much better. The spark plug that had popped out 2 days earlier again worked loose, and Cal had to hold it in with one hand and fly the plane with the other. He finally gave up and landed at Hornell at 3:47 p.m. When he touched down, his left skid snagged something. The plane slewed violently, throwing Cal out of his seat and smashing the left wing. Rogers was not hurt.
Anna and her husband, Charles Wellington, as president of Steuben Trust, dedicated a room in the Hornell Public Library in memory of their son, David Kettiganetz. That room became the children's room. Bet's family were strong supporters of the Hornell Library.
Flying for fun, fame, and fortune, Calvert P. Rogers, one of the most daring birdmen the world has yet known, passed over Hornell yesterday, flying on his great flight from coast to coast, with the white wings of the big biplane shimmering in the sunshine like a great bird. The aircraft lifted majestically from the place where it had been forced descent the previous day, darting out over the village of Cancio, circling about twice. The young Aviator tilted his elevator until the aircraft attained a height of 2,030 feet. Then straight up the valley he came, and at last the famous Aviator was over the city of Hornell. Probably every man, woman, and child not confined to bed jail-jammed the streets, the rooftops, and the neighboring hills Saturday afternoon when Rogers first approached the city. There he comes, came the shout from the people on top of the buildings. Evening Tribute Time, September 25, 1911.
Women's rights leaders and her now.
Women's liberation, Susan B. Anthony.
Susan B. Anthony had a debate with the Hornellsville attorney Horace Bevis. She came from Rochester and was going to a debate about women's suffrage. They had the debate at the Metropolitan Hall in Hornell, New York on May 19, 1870.
Among the most controversial lectures was that of Susan B. Anthony on May 19, 1870 on the topic Work Wages and the Ballot. She debated the questions of women's suffrage with a prominent Hornellsville attorney, Horace Bevis. One account reads, one position was maintained by vehement and stubborn assertions and was met with well-stated arguments and witty repartee. It is quite safe to say that the cause of universal suffrage was not advanced by this debate. The Evening Tribune reported that Anthony based her only argument, if it can be dignified as such, upon the one fact that the ballot constitutes a power and that woman to obtain her rights equal with man must be put in possession of that power. She did not tell us whether it would elevate or degrade the moral standard of women, and her whole talk was devoted to prove the pecuniary results flow from her endowing her with the elector franchise. The Tribune also offered the speculation on women's suffrage. If throwing a firebrand upon the hearthstone of every household, breeding dissensions, between heads of family, arraying the husband against wife, daughter against parent, brother against sister, and setting whole neighborhoods by the ears of overexcited political questions, leading the mothers of well-regulated families to abandon household affairs, and servants to follow in their wake to mingle in that strife, to elector near their neighbors, will elevate the refinement of ladies, then we say give her the ballot. The Tribune did not endorse universal suffrage, particularly not when tendered fresh from the lips of a smart-talking woman in the shape of the Second Temptation.
Mrs. Jordan Lord Pound.
On June 1873, she gave a lecture at the Metropolitan Hall in Hornell, New York. She had been engaged to deliver the address for that year before in the Athenaeum Society of Alfred University. At the last moment, the faculty of the Sea of Learning dared not rest the effect of the choice of the ladies of his society upon her arrival here of the dilemma the society was in. And at the suggestion of the committee, consented to deliver her address at the Metropolitan Hall in Hornellsville that evening. Notice was hastily given to the public, and a good-sized audience greeted her. Our people with those from the university and its locality who had the temerity and courage to attend went away convinced that Hornellsville had been favored by what the university missed.
Anna Laura Godot-Linetz lived her adult life in Hornellsville. She also fought for women's suffrage and all rights. But, said Mrs. Hatch, called Mrs. Gilman, the nation that shall first recognize the sonship of their mother shall lead the world.
She was very involved with the world, and she was well educated. She had gone to normal school, which was not all that uncommon. That just meant that she could be a teacher. Then she went on to Alfred University and got a degree in writing. Then she went on to the University of Michigan. And I'm not sure what kind of degree she got there. I just know that she did that.
Anna adds to a newspaper column, Suffrage Notes and Comments, which was unheard of back then, about women's suffrage, which appeared in 40 newspapers from 1912 to 1917.
She started an open-air market, which would be like today's farmers market, to improve the nutrition and health of people.
Anna Etz was one of the founders of the children's home in Hornell for orphans.
She was known for being a suffragette, and she wrote from 1914 to 1917 in 40 different newspapers, carried her articles about women's suffrage. She was really such an advocate for all people and trying to make children's lives better, women's lives better, and if the men's lives were better, she felt that it would reach the women and their children.
In 1896, she was elected for school board and won. In 1897, Anna Adds served on the Board of Education.
And she started a club for women to raise them up for education and wages and just make their lives better and make them understand that they really were equal to men and they had a lot to offer the world.
Following World War I, she thought Americanization and adult education programs.
Anna S. also ran a club in Greenwood to make women feel good about themselves.
Anna and her husband, Charles Wellington Adds, president of Steuben Trust, dedicated a room in the Hornell Public Library in memory of their son, David Kedikanetz. That room became the children's room. That's family were strong supporters of the Hornell Library